Okay, I'm Kaz Gurney, Goulburn Valley Community Legal Centre Managing Lawyer. And before I start, I'd very, very much like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're meeting today, Wajik people, the people of the Swan River. And I pay my respects to them, their elders, past and present, and I certainly thank very much any members of the Aboriginal tribes that are present here today. Goulburn Valley Community Legal Centre is a small community legal centre located in Shepparton in the north-central north area of Victoria. It's traditionally a farming area, a lot of irrigation around Shepparton, some fairly intensive farming, and a bit further out, cropping, livestock and what have you. I often tell people that Shepparton's sort of two cities. It's the sixth largest city in Victoria. It's one of 6 local government areas in which we're working, or 5 we're in at the moment. One I've got my fingers crossed that we'll be in very shortly. Most of the other townships in the catchment are quite small. But Shepparton's an interesting place because that prevalence of agriculture, especially intensive agriculture, has been a source of attraction for a whole heap of people over a very long time. And starting with our Indigenous people, it was a traditional food area for people who were hunters and gatherers before the arrival of other people from overseas. It's been an attraction also for more recent arrivals. Certainly before World War II, we had people coming from Afghanistan, for example, people who originally had come out with the Cameleers and who then migrated to Victoria. But after World War II, we had a succession of arrivals. We had the Italians and the Greeks. During the war, we had people arriving from, well, particularly Germany, those that were escaping the oppression of the Nazis. We saw others starting to arrive. More recently, Turkish, Albanian, more Afghans, Iran, Iraq, and most recently, we're now seeing an influx of people coming from mainly the Central African states, Sudan, Somalia, Congo, those sorts of areas. And it's that attraction to agriculture because for most of those people, putting their hands in the dirt and working the dirt is very much part of their culture. We're a generalist service, Goulburn Valley Community Legal Centre. We have a community where half of them are doing quite nicely, thank you. They live in a nice home, they're employed, or they're retired farmers, they're in business, and they're doing quite nicely. But there's about 50% of the population that are doing it damned hard. Very, very vulnerable. We have the largest population of Aboriginal people in Victoria outside of Melbourne. My Yorta Yorta Bangarang friends around Shepparton proudly say that they're actually the largest community because there's a whole heap of different mobs down there in Melbourne and they are an integrated community. We have 6,500 members of the Colt community in Shepparton. We have some really, really serious socio-economic problems. We have one of the lowest rates of transition from secondary to tertiary study. We have unemployment amongst our youth in excess of 35%. We have the highest teen pregnancy rate in Victoria. We have a huge number of kids who are growing up in out-of-home care. Very significant interventions and particularly affecting our Aboriginal brothers and sisters. So there are lots and lots of issues, and for that reason our Community Legal Centre has quite a challenge ahead of it. One way that we've responded to that challenge is to seek project funding to introduce what's known as therapeutic justice. And my colleague Sejal Amin and our associate colleague from Primary Care Connect, our partner in our Therapeutic Justice project. David Johns are both here and will be talking to you in more detail about the work that they do and the results that they've been achieving. Our project's funded by the Legal Services Board of Victoria, and it's a $500,000 project over 3 years. Health justice partnerships, to me, are a bit like a stick. A stick's a traditional weapon. It's used to defend. It's not a weapon of aggression, but it's a weapon of defence. And I sort of think of it as a stick. And at one end, we've got what I now regard as being traditional health justice partnerships, where a lawyer is moved out and situated within a health service. The understanding has grown over a period of time that people who have significant health issues often have legal issues that are bubbling away under the surface there, and that if there's some help given to those legal issues, their health, their physical and mental health will improve. But at the other end of the stick, there's those people who have already, unfortunately, become significantly engaged in the justice system. They're people who have court matters. They've got proceedings either current or pending, and they have lots of underlying issues. It doesn't take the intelligence of Einstein to understand that if those underlying issues have brought them to the stage where they're committing crime, whatever it may be, that unless you deal with those underlying issues, they're going to keep on coming back. And we get that round and round and roundabout of offending, that cycle of recidivism. So a therapeutic justice project revolves around a philosophy, which is the therapeutic jurisprudence. And it says that the law can have therapeutic effects, positive effects. It can actually be used to deal with some of those underlying issues if it's applied wisely and carefully and thoughtfully. It also recognises that if it's not applied thoughtfully, carefully, wisely, it can have some pretty anti-therapeutic effects too. Therapeutic justice is a rapidly growing process around the world. The data's already rolling in. It says that it's very, very effective. It's part of what some of you might think of as being problem-solving courts. In Victoria, we have a Koori Court, for example, Koori Children's Court now too. We have special lists, the Assessment and Referral Court, to deal with people with mental health issues sensitively and carefully, and to get them into appropriate health services. We have the KISP system, and somebody mentioned the KISP system this morning, the Court Integrated Services Program, which is a court-initiated assessment program, especially used for bail matters. It's conducted by people who are employees of the court, and in my humble opinion, it misses out on the real point of things, because it's more directed at providing information to the magistrates to help them with decisions about bail or dispositions in sentencing than it is directed at actually fixing up what's wrong with the client in the first place. The project that we're running and the philosophy that we're working on is one that provides a seamless link between the services that are needed at court. And I know every one of you practices a therapeutic justice approach. If you've got clients in court and they've got issues, underlying issues, you'll make those connections to health services, to crisis services, to accommodation services, because you know that that's needed. So in each and every one of you, I'm sure, there's a therapeutic justice brain ticking away in there, trying to work out what's the best we can do for this particular client. I spent 4.5 years at a local court called the Neighbourhood Justice Centre in Collingwood, And it's also one of these problem-solving courts. And it has a particular therapeutic approach because integrated right there with the court, and it's got all the bells and whistles. It's got all the services that you could possibly wish for in a multicultural community in inner Melbourne, to be able to provide those services right on the spot. The magistrate has a particular role of working with local people, and he's theoretically the magistrate for the city of Yarra, where the court is situated. It's a step backwards to the old days of the local court or community court, where the judicial officer actually got to know the people that were coming before him. And I guess that's where I started to get a passion for this process of trying to deal with the underlying issues, working with people. One of the things that is niggling at me right at the moment is that we have a really good family violence duty lawyer service working in each of the 5 courts that we provide lawyer services to in our catchment at the present time. We've got this, I think, terrific therapeutic justice project running, dealing with people who've got really complex personal issues as well as their criminal issues. But there's a big gap right there in the middle. I said to one of my Aboriginal friends here yesterday, we need to take the lesson of working in a holistic way. We need to close that gap between the criminal result and the early symptoms of family violence that brings things to people's attention. We need to be able to close that gap. And we can do it in a therapeutic way. I've been really heartened because I lived in Western Australia quite a long while ago. In fact, I left here in 1980, so it is quite a while back. I lived up in the northwest, and I lived in an area where there were Aboriginal people, where there were white people, and where there was a fair bit of discrimination being committed against the minority. Really hardened. I found 2 articles over the weekend. I'm a bit of a news junkie, and I found 2 articles in the West Australian newspaper. One was about the need for more homes for the homeless, and it was by Chief Justice Wayne Martin, who was here this morning, and he said, if the factors, persons' homelessness, for example, are not successfully addressed, further offending is inevitable. A solution-focused approach to offenders is much more likely to protect the community from reoffending than an approach based on punishment or deterrence. I was also very thrilled to read an article about a young fellow from up in the Pilbara who lives in the Goulburn area, had been a bit of a naughty boy for quite a long while, pinched a few cars and things, and was at that stage where he could have really ended up in serious trouble. And he was lucky enough to go before Magistrate Antoine Bloman, who, after hearing from a local TAFE lecturer who had been doing a little bit of work with this young fella in gardening, sentenced him to 440 hours of service of a horticultural course. And that young kid now is a grown man who's got his own business working in agriculture and horticulture and teaching others. That's a really fantastic thing. Finally, I'd recommend to you a solution-focused judging bench book. It's all available online. It's by Magistrate Michael King, who's a magistrate in Victoria now, was a magistrate in Western Australia, has lectured at university in Melbourne as well, and it's got some really, really great enthusing material in it. And I hope that you'll all continue and develop your practice therapeutically in the courts. I'd now like to introduce Sejal Amin, who's our Therapeutic Justice Lawyer, who actually does the work. I just do the talking.
So my name is Sej. I'm a Therapeutic Justice Lawyer at Goulburn Valley Community Legal Centre. We do a partnership program with Primary Care Connect, and this is David Johns, who's the allied health worker. Firstly, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land upon which we are meeting and pay our respects to their elders past and present and the elders from other communities who may be here today. So as you know, we're funded by the Victorian Legal Services Board and Commissioner. It's a health justice partnership, but ours is just a little bit different in that we place an allied health worker at court. The Shepparton Magistrates Court, there aren't many visible services there, and I guess this is a way that we're trying to address the issues. I'm just going to play a video if I know how.
No sound.
Think that sort of material and all that sort of thing. It's too much to bear.
So it's easier just to think about.
Yeah, the drugs. Get on the drugs now to think about it.
This is just an example of some of the clientele that we deal with. So I'll just explain our role. So as the TJ lawyer, I give legal advice, advocacy, so representation at court, but I also provide community legal education to my partner, Primary Care Connect, but also other agencies in the area. David's role, he's going to explain in a bit more detail what he does, but he's basically the person who connects the clients to appropriate support services and sort of does the care facilitator type role.
I just feel as if I'm not going to accomplish anything. It's just it's easy.
Okay. So our model, I'll just explain why we have done this in terms of dealing with medium to high risk offenders. In Victoria, what we find is that unless you're on a community corrections order, you actually don't get any other services. So you get a suite of services when you've actually done some high type of offending, but anything below that, you actually don't get any services in Shepparton. So our criteria is that they have to have multiple healthcare issues, minimum 2. That's usually the drug and alcohol, substance abuse issues, and the related mental health issues, and the multiple legal issues. And that is usually the criminal offending and any other related matters. What we have found is that we go to court 3 days a week. On the Tuesday, it's our Family Violence Day. We sit in a morning meeting with relevant stakeholders. That includes the Family Violence Registrar, Victoria Police Prosecutor, the Family Violence Court Liaison Officer from Victoria Police, Marion Community, which is a family violence organisation, and then the duty lawyers.
Ramp coordinator as well.
And what we find is that we're actually getting referrals from the police, which is great. And that's what we pick up is the family violence matters and then the related criminal matters, and that then flows on to the family law / child protection matters. And as you can see, so they get engagement with David, and it's one-on-one throughout the entire process. Other clients may be assisted on a case-by-case basis, and what we have found that we do have a criteria, but over the last year and a half that we've been in operation, because there aren't any services at the Shepparton Magistrates Court, we've actually just been assisting most people. Whenever we get a referral, we don't really say no, and I don't have any problems in not adhering to our guidelines.
It's really hard. I guess our criteria was a little bit stringent because there is only one of me, and I can't help everyone, even though at times I think I can. I actually can't. So that's probably why the criteria is the way it is, a little bit stiff. But yeah, we are flexible.
One of the conditions, I guess, of being a part of our program is that they have to engage. It is voluntary, so no one can tell them to do this. It has to be voluntary, but they actually do have to follow, I guess, the goals that we set for them to achieve.
And I think just to be mindful of the client, they have to appreciate that potentially the lawyer's going to be asking the magistrate to adjourn the matter, to get some runs on the board. And if we come back and nothing's happened, they may have done themselves a bit of an injustice there. So I think at that initial pickup, we have that, it's important to have that conversation.
The other thing is that it's not, I don't have to be the only lawyer that represents the clients or the participants. Other legal practitioners in the area can also refer their clients to the program, and we find it's like 50% of those clients actually are from the other practitioners, and including Victoria Legal Aid. So this is our model, and David and I actually spent some time in Melbourne. We went to the Neighbourhood Justice Centre, we went to the drug court in Dandenong, we sat in on the ARC list in Melbourne, spoke to the program coordinator of KISP. So we actually did a bit of research before we developed our own model, so I guess we're quite lucky. And we
played a little bit, so we took on a few clients when we were just learning. And I'll never forget one of the first guys, just to tell a story. He was a young Aboriginal man, he was 24, I'll tell it very quickly. He had a history of offending, I think he said to me, as a juvenile, he spent 3 consecutive Christmases in jail, but it wasn't 3 years in jail, but it was just happened to be Christmas time. He had 4 kids, they were all involved in child protection, relationship breakdowns, and substance abuse, so he had a lot of issues. But what was really interesting for me is, I'm like, well, who are you connected with? Have you got any other support services? And he was able to tell me 12 agencies that he was connected with. I'm like, well, that's great, and part of what we do, which is part of our plan, is the review phase, and we had a case conference. So I got all those agencies in, and he was in that meeting as well, and we sat down, and one thing that, this kid's connected really well, but he's still offending. He's still homeless. These issues aren't being addressed. And it was funny, corrections, because he was also at breach of a corrections order. They said, he's at breach of the order because on the 14th he didn't show up. And then another agency said, well, on the 14th he was at my agency. So really we're all setting him up to fail. So I think part of we've got the services in Shepparton, but they're just not being managed, and we're all working in, I hate the word silos, but it's just what was happening. So part of what I do is coordinate that, coordinate the services and do that real case management stuff. So Resolve is the other thing we do, and that, as simple as it is, it's actually really cool, and that is, it's a simple plan, and that happens often at court, and we may present the magistrate with that. It's really just a care plan. It's really just some goals, and it's never anything really big. Well, it could be as big as, you need to go to Melbourne and get a neuropsych report done, or it could be as little as, we had this one guy, and he'd been out of jail. And he's about 45, and he's pretty tough, and he was sitting there, and he, and his mum was there with him, and his mum was quite elderly, and mum's like, well, you know what, I'd love for him to come around and, help around the house a bit more. And he's like, and that relationship was a little bit strained. Great, let's put that on the plan. Go around to mum's house, once a week. So it can be little things like that, or it could be just go for a walk, every day, or it could be one guy, his thing was to have a shower every 2 days. So it's a pretty cool plan, but who's a part of that? It's the lawyer, it's if they've got a drug and alcohol worker, if they've got any connections. And I guess all I do really in that is facilitate it. It's their plan, it's their thing. I've got another little quick story, if I can.
David loves his stories.
I had this one guy, he was Aboriginal as well, actually, not that that's really relevant in this context. He, what had happened is just to give you his offending, he'd gone around, quite serious offending, he'd gone around to a house and he'd smashed out all the windows in this house. He'd also twice been assaulted emergency services with the police, and also drink driving. So, and he was also at breach of a corrections order. So, and he also, something else. But anyway, so quite some serious stuff. And he was presented to me at court by another lawyer, and he, he was drunk. I'm like, oh, geez, this is going to be difficult. So we developed the plan, and about 2 weeks into it, I rang up, and you know, it was connection to drug and alcohol, some men's behaviour change stuff, all the good things that you think would be successful. And I'm like, you know, how are you going connecting? What's going on? And he's like, I've done it. I'm overseeing a drug and alcohol worker. I've just finished a men's behaviour change program, and you want me to do it again? And I'm like, well, you need to come in and let's work it out. And so we came in, and it turned out that he was the father of 4 kids, and they were struggling with some financial issues as well, which we sorted out. But we put him into a parenting program, and what I loved about that and I knew what was happening, is he came back to court and he was able to express to the magistrate and to his lawyer the early, in his language, you know, the early childhood trauma that he suffered from his father, and how he was doing that to his own kids, and he didn't realise that he was doing it, you know. So he then got his partner in that parenting program as well, so they could be aligned. And they were also able to fly her mother over from Western Australia, and they went on a family holiday that they'd never done before because he accessed some super when he was working. So, you know, to me, that's just an amazing thing. I'm going on a little bit, sorry, but Sej.
So yeah, but Resolve is basically just setting some goals, and I think the most important part of that is that the participant actually has a say. So they're sort of identifying the issues themselves and also having some input into what's going to happen. Then we have the review stage. So Resolve is usually addressing the crisis issues. We sort of review what's going on, see what the progress is like, what David has said, see if there needs to be amendment to the plan or if there's some other services. If something's not working, let's try something else. Often we get, you know, kids are referred to, for example, Headspace not working, let's refer you to someone else. It's not that it has to be process driven and, you know, you have to see a particular service. So the referral process, I may skip a bit of this, but I may just touch on one thing, and that is what we've done. We don't have actually a lot of paperwork in terms of referrals. There's no forms or anything like that. I think the key is that we are present at court, so we're quite visible. We've done a lot of stakeholder engagement and gone to relevant agencies. And the referral process is basically giving PCC's number and talking to David. So David does an initial assessment, and that's including doing the consent to share forms and all of that in one go, so that when I get involved or someone else gets involved, they can get right into the issues and not actually fill out more paperwork. So evaluation, our evaluation framework, we don't actually have external evaluators. Unfortunately, we didn't have funding for it. However, we've been guided by the Victorian Legal Services Board in the evaluation workshops that's run by Dr. Liz Curran, and with the assistance of Rob Southgate at Loddon Capacity Community Legal Centre, and he has assisted with the evaluation with the Health Justice Partnership in Bendigo. So these are the tools that we're tracking, tracking our progress. We conducted an initial survey. We have a client register which has a lot of information in terms of personal details for the type of legal matters, what issues they have, what have we connected them to, how many resolve plans. And an important part of that is that David does a self-assessment with the participant using the STAR tool, where they sort of assess themselves at intake, at end of the legal matter, and then a few months afterwards to see how they're going.
So just very, very quickly on that self-assessment tool, it's a really, I guess part of my job is, you know, and it's up next, is, you know, I really need to build that rapport really quickly. I need to understand what your issues are. And this tool, and I was surprised because it wasn't a part of our evaluation, but it's so much more than that. I can very quickly, it's amazing to see it happen, but you know, if I was to go up to someone at court and say, oh, you know, have you got mental health issues? They're initially probably going to say, well, you know, I don't know you. No, I haven't. But if they have the ability to self-assess themselves, and it starts off and ramps up, you know, so it's about accommodation initially, and there's about 9 areas it covers, and then it gets to your mental health stuff. But it's almost like, you know, they step outside and they are self-assessing themselves, so it's not as confronting, and it's just a simple little tool, and it just works so well. So if anyone wants to talk about that, I'm more than happy to share that, because it really works. I think, are we getting rushed along a little bit?
Yeah, I think we are. Just 2 minutes. Just want to highlight a couple of the statistics that we have found through this process through our client register, and that is about 40% of our clients are Aboriginal. About 35% have the family violence intervention order matters with related criminal matters. 70% have substance abuse issues, 75% with mental health issues, 11% have been referred by a friend or a family member, so a pre-existing connection with the program, which is something that I'm quite proud of. I think that's fantastic that we're getting, it's not just helping the clients, actually helping their family as well. And about 70% have completed their resolve plan and connected with the program. Our initial target was 25, to assist 25 people. At the end of last year, we assisted 58. To date, it's 113. So we're doing quite well, but that's also because we don't know how to say no. And we're getting more referrals from the magistrates who are calling us up.
And also lots of referrals from families as well, especially in the Aboriginal community. It's very, it's linked in. Can you help my cousin? Can you help my brother? So I think that's awesome as well.
We may wrap it up here because we do have the PowerPoint presentation that we can circulate. So it has more details about the outcomes from our first snapshot evaluation that we had earlier this year in May, which is quite interesting. But I think the time constraints will end it there. Thank you for the time.